Hello and welcome to Findlay Designs. Today we're going to be working on another beach scene. This is the largest round beach scene that I've done to date, and I'm actually tackling the sand in a slightly different way than I've done in previous projects. So this board is 90 centimeters in diameter and I'm giving it 2 coats of paint primer and sealer. Now you can use any paint primer from your local hardware store. So once that is dry, I'm going to start out by painting in the design that I want to work with. So starting out with the sand at the bottom, so I'm just using some white acrylic paint mixed in with a touch of gold to create that sand colour. It doesn't need to be perfect, it's just to give it a base, but the main reason I'm doing this is that I want to paint the sides in the same colour so that when the resin runs off the sides and the resin's a little bit on the thinner side, you've still got good colour coverage on the sides, and the resin, albeit a bit thinner, it still gives it that glossy look and finished look. So this just helps with making sure that you've got a nice finish to the sides of your board. So the colours I've used for the water is phthalo green and ultramarine blue, and then I'm just going to blend the 2 colours together and then add a touch of white to just lighten it in some areas and get a feel for how I want the design to look like, and also to make sure that those colours translate over the sides, and when we come to do the resin it doesn't look like a hard line, if you like, so it's going to be blended a bit more. Painting your board is obviously optional, but I just think it gives you a good base for making sure that you like the layout and design of your piece, especially working on larger boards. I don't do this on smaller boards because the smaller boards don't need the sides painting as such, because they're only 5 mil thick, so they don't need the sides painting. I don't worry too much about that. Plus I use the smaller boards for experimenting and the likes, but this piece is replacing a large piece that was sold a little while ago in the gallery, so I needed a board to replace that one, and the beach themes proved to be quite popular, hence why I'm doing another beach one. So for the sand at the bottom here, I've mixed the sand in with the resin. I've also added a touch of white in with the sand to lighten it a little bit. However, I found that later on the sand had sunk to the bottom and then the white resin was sitting on the top, and it wasn't the look that I was after. So this is where I end up doing something a little bit different, and again I'll come to that a little bit later on in the video. So next I've mixed up some of like a teal green and a blue for the water. Now this is my own blend of colours, and I will include a link for those in the description below, along with all the other products and things we use in here. I will leave links below in the description. So I'm actually going to let this sit for about 10 minutes. So while that's sitting, before I move it around, I'm going to go back to the sand. As you can see here, it's gone quite light and I wasn't liking how that was looking, so I decided to actually tip sand directly onto the wet resin. And I started moving it around initially with a stick, but then found it moved a lot easier using my hand, so I just pushed that sand around and pushing it into the resin. And I'm really liking the texture of this, so just making sure that it's got plenty on there to cover the whole area. Now I wasn't sure how well this was going to turn out, just putting the sand directly on the top and moving it around, but I really like the results and I will definitely be using this method again. So next time I probably won't bother mixing the sand in with the resin. I'll just pour the resin and tip the sand on top and then move it around with my hand until I've got the desired texture, because I'm liking the difference between the contrast between the texture of the resin and the gloss, sorry, the texture of the sand and the gloss of the resin. So it's making a really nice, it really makes a nice texture. So as always here I'm just moving the resin around, just using my fingers to dabble through the resin to get that watery effect, because you don't get hard lines in water. So I'm just making sure that that's mixed but not overdone, so just gently tapping my fingers across the surface, and also making sure that the sides of the board have got a coating of resin also, and then come back and just pop any bubbles that you find on the surface of your resin. So now I've mixed up another small batch of resin, and I'm pouring some clear on top of the colour, and then on top of that I'm pouring the white. And the reason why I'm putting the clear down first is to make sure that the white, there's a bit of a barrier between the white and the colours below. Now as the colours below have been sitting for probably about 20 minutes, it has started to cure, so it's not going to move too much when I blow this now with the heat gun. However, adding heat will cause it to move ever so slightly, but it does allow the resin waves to just move just a little bit more over the surface. And what I'm doing here is I'm keeping the nozzle of the heat gun quite close to the surface and not concentrating too much in one area, because I don't want to burn the resin. So just keep it constantly moving and quite low to the surface so that you've got a good blowing action without blowing it too much, because you don't want to blow all your white away. And I've got this on the highest heat setting that this particular heat gun will do, which blows faster, and it's 600 degrees, whereas the lowest setting is 400 degrees. So I find the lower setting's good for just popping bubbles, but if I want to move the resin, then the higher setting works well. So to finish off this piece, I've decided to add some shells. So I'm just coating those in the resin. So the leftover resin that I've got there, I'm just throwing the shells into the cup and just making sure they're well and truly covered. I'm also going to use some of the leftover green that I have from the background of the water, and I'm just going to put a little bit of that into the centre of the shell line down to give the impression that there's some water there. I did end up actually removing that again and then just mixing it with some clear just to make it a bit lighter, but I didn't video that bit, so apologies for that. If you are new to resin and don't know where to start, you will find a link for my book in the description below. You will also find other links for my membership site, Instagram, Facebook, and different groups, etc. in the links below. And so as always, I hope you enjoyed this video and you like the idea of placing the sand afterwards. I certainly like the sand afterwards because it gives good contrast between the texture and the glossy areas. So if you like this, then please give it a thumbs up, or better still, subscribe to my channel. I have plenty of other ideas to keep you inspired.